Welcome back. This lesson is going to be the one where we're going to build out that random sequence that's going to play and that the user needs to watch and then mimic that same sequence. So let's open up our editor and go into the run sequence function. And the first thing that we want to do within the run sequence is I want to select all of the current squares within our DOM. So I'm going to create a new object, call it squares, using document query selector, and we're going to use query selector all because we want to grab all of the elements on the page that have a class of box. So essentially there's going to be 4 of them because we did build 4 of them out, and we're going to use this random value in order to determine what random color, so out of the 4 colors that we have available, which one we want to light up, and we're going to build out that sequence within that type of format. We're also, because this is creating a brand new sequence each time, we need to pass in a number, and we're going to loop through that number. So this number will be dynamically counting down from the value of play num. So the first time we run through, it will run this through 1 time. And the way that we're going to do that is that we're going to create a condition here that's going to check to see if the value of num is less than 0, and if it is, then we've run through the sequence. So every time we do a pass through of run sequence, we're going to decrease the value of num by 1, and we're going to continuously pass through that value within a loop within this function. We're going to also be setting the value of play to true. So this means that we're only going to allow the user to build their sequence after our sequence has finished running. And this is going to allow us to prevent cheating within the game. Otherwise, the user could just watch as the colors appeared and could click those same colors, building out their own sequence. So we want to make sure that that is not available. And then here, we just simply want to return back that function. So it's going to return it back to the player area. So selecting out a random number. So we need a random number. And we can take a look at what's available at MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. There's quite a bit for math. We need to use some of the math methods that are available. First of all, math random, which is going to return a random floating point number from 0 to 1, but not including 1. And you can take a look at the example here to get a better idea of what's being returned back. And when we run it, we see that it returns back this long number, so 0, decimal, and a bunch of digits after that. And so what we want to do is we want to multiply this by the number that we want to use, and we want to use math floor, which is going to bring that value down to the nearest largest integer less than or equivalent to the given number. And you can see an example of that as well. So if we have 5.95, if we floor it, we get 5. If we ceiling it, we're going to get 6. And again, over here, 5.05. If we floor it, we get 5. If we ceiling it, we get 6. And there's another example of what math floor. So if it's 5, it's going to remain 5. So basically, think of it this way, that's getting rid of the decimal places there when we're doing math floor. And that's going to fix having all of those extra digits and give us the ability to pick up a math random number. So the way that we can do that is we can do math floor and wrap math random inside of it. And then math random, we can randomize it and multiply it by a value. And we do have an array where we've got our game colors. So every array has a length. So we can use that length value and get a random number. So I'll show you how that works. And within our random number, you can see that we're going to generate a random number when we hit start. So we got a random number of 3, again, a random number of 3, and this time our number is 1. So it's going to be anywhere from 0 to 3. And that's going to correspond with the values that we have within our array, because we know that arrays start at a 0 value. And it's also going to correspond with the number of squares that we have available to us. And we know the square order is going to be the same as the array order because we built the squares using the array. So now when we take that squares value and use the random number as the index value within the square, and we hit start, what we're doing is we're randomly selecting one of the elements. And we can use that to add and update the opacity as well as push it into our new sequence. So I'll show you how to do that. So we've got our game clicks array. So this is the opposite of the users array, user clicks array. And what we're doing is essentially doing the same thing as we're doing over here where we're checking the answer, except we're pushing in that value into that array sequence. So we're using JavaScript push, and the value that we're pushing in is going to come from the game colors array, and we're going to use that random num as the index value for it. So once again, refreshing, we hit start, and this is now generating that random color into our game clicks array. And you can also see that when we console that value out. So now we're going to have a random color in there. So we've got blue in there. Next, what we want to do is we want to update that opacity. So we've got our element under squares. So this is the selected element at random. So whichever one we're selecting at random. And because it's an element object, we can apply the opacity to it. And we'll set the opacity to 1. So now what's going to happen is when we hit start, one of these squares is going to light up at random. So in that case, it was just red. This time it's yellow, and it's completely random because we're using the math random. So that gives us the ability to select those elements. We're adding it into our game clicks array. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to use that set timeout once again and run a timeout on this function because we might have more items that we want to add into the array. A larger number, so in case we're starting out with maybe 3 squares that we want to play, and we hit start, we want to show all of the other squares as well. And in this case, because we only had the 1, we weren't able to see that. But now when we're setting that set function, we can handle multiple values that are going to get added into our game clicks array. And I'll show you how to do that in the upcoming lesson. And we're going to do that with the set timeout. But for now, what we can do is we can take that same element value, and what we'll do is we'll set it back to 0.5, just as we did with the other function. And we'll set it back to 0.5 after 100 milliseconds. So go out and refresh, hit start, and we see that it blinks. So we need to do it for 500 milliseconds. So this is going to be how we're going to demonstrate the pattern to the player. They're going to come and hit start, and then they're going to see a pattern of a bunch of the boxes are going to light up. And then next, it's up to them to copy that pattern. So coming up next, I'll show you how to continue to build out this sequence.